Marshall Peak Chapter 9. Treasure Meng throughout his years in High Heaven Pavilion, the only person Yan Kai really knew was Treasure Meng. After all, he needed to go to him every month. Treasure Meng had a nickname, which most people referred to him as Bully Meng. Even though his position is a treasure, he still liked to extort contribution points from other disciples. Take blood clotting cream, for example. Usually, it would be sold round 10 contribution points. He will sell 2 bottles for the price of 3. Also, the amount of cream that should go into bottles was put into 3. It's very simple, he said. Buy it or get lost. Of course, Treasure Meng doesn't always do it, only occasionally. He only targets richer disciples. For poor people like Yan Kai, he doesn't even bother. Contribution points are hard to come by, so how can disciples stand by and be exploited? Every disciple that had been cheated by him would report him to the elders' council. They have warned him numerous times, but he still continued unmoved. Furthermore, his position is crucial, and there was no one who could replace him. Due to this, all of the sect's disciples hated him to the utmost limit. That old man was ruthless to everybody, except Yan Kai, to whom he could do nothing. That was because one time, he was picking at a female disciple, and was caught red-handed by him. Sullivan, see, he is another old leper, no respect for the elderly. What a scandal! He was caught, so Treasure Meng could only lower his head in front of Yan Kai. It was exactly because of this that Yan Kai became very familiar with the old man. The lecherous old man, with thick skin, quickly adjusted his attitude and said, same as always, Ursa. For those who don't know, thick skin is being very shameless, yap. Yan Kai said earnestly while nodding his head. Not saying a word, Treasure Meng took out $10 from within the counter and recorded it down. Taking the silvers, he asked, how many contribution points do I have now? Rolling his eyes, the treasurer replied, you earn 4 points each month, and then use 1 point to exchange for $10. That leaves you with only 3 points to save, making a total of 12 points in your account. What, you want to exchange them for a bottle of blood-clotting cream? No, I was just asking, he replied while muttering 12 et. Such a small amount, even if you just wanted to exchange it for a small medicinal herb, it wouldn't even be enough. With a serious face, Treasure Meng whispered to him, little Yan Kai, you want to save up and exchange it for a tempered essence pellet. But to save up for it, and then to rank up with your speed, how long will that take? Won't I eventually reach it? He replied, chuckling. This left Treasure Meng speechless. He thought that with his speed, by the time he makes it, this old man will have already been dead for many years. But Treasure Meng, there is one thing I don't understand, the old man said while putting on I am in a good mood, so I will tell you at two. The tempered essence pill is a very precious medicine. How could it appear here? Speaking with a proud face, that is because this pellet is this old man's treasure. Others don't know about it. Ah, it's yours. This left Yan Kai stunned. He had always thought that this pellet belonged to the school. No wonder this old thing set such an astronomical price. He joyfully said, while taking a drink from the teapot. I won't bully you as long as you bring enough contribution points to exchange. Old Meng will give it to you, for my word is not nothing, he said, nodding. With his face downcast, Old Meng asked Yan Kai, I heard that yesterday you got a beating. Immediately Yan Kai turned around and left. From behind, Treasure Meng shouted, let this old man ask. Don't be in such a hurry to walk away, he said, but really he was gloating inside. Seeing that Yan Kai had no intention to stop, he straightened up and yelled, little Yan Kai, you should hurry up and leave. High Heaven Pavilion is no place for you to be. Sooner rather than later you will be killed. Pausing but without turning round, Yan Kai sighed, I have no place to return to. He was finished if he left. After holding the teapot for a while, Treasure Meng said, "Then why did you come?" "Tempered essence pill." He, this expensive treasure. How could this old man possibly own it? He only made up this lie to give you hope. He had never thought you would take it seriously. Yan Kai then hurriedly went back to his hut and put the broom away, then briskly walked out. He was going to the small village outside of Tanlin to buy his food with his $10, like he did every month. For the first time, this trip didn't make him feel tired. Previously, every time he walked down this path, he would get bad asthma attacks again and again. But this time, not only did this not happen, his body felt strengthened compared to before, felt less strained walking down the path. Even if he walked 100 miles, he felt that he wouldn't tire. Is it the golden skeleton? This made him think of something that happened this morning. While he was swooping, another disciple had crashed into him, but on the contrary to what normally occurred, he had held his ground very stably, while the disciple had fell to the ground. Although this wasn't much, in retrospect, it was unusual. With his weak physique, how could he not have fallen, but the other party fell? It had always been him who fell. Growing more and more excited, he thought about the changes the golden skeleton had brought to his body. Although these changes were small, gradually over the course of time they could culminate into great changes. Thinking of this, Yan Kai recovered and soon walked to town. Looking round, he went to the left-hand side of the street. He was going to a rice shop. The shop wasn't big, and the owner is surnamed He, and was a local resident. He treated all customers the same. This was one of the reasons why Yan Kai bought from him. Such a small store could be found everywhere. The reason why Black Plum Village was very busy was because in the surrounding area, apart them, there was not only High Heaven Pavilion, but also the Windy Rain sect. The relationship between the two could not be considered bad. The various other small sects couldn't compare to these two main sects, for they didn't even own their own land. It was precisely because of these two main sects that the village was able to sell many different weapons and maintain such a bustling environment full of many different wares, creating an environment just like the Han Dynasty's capital. After walking round for a while, Yan Kai inadvertently walked past an alley where some people were gathered. He didn't know what they were doing, but they were pretty suspicious and gave Yan Kai an extremely vicious glare. Chuckling lightly, he just followed the principle, "If they don't harm me, I won't harm them." He just ignored them. But among those three there was one who dressed in a similar fashion to Yan Kai. Marshall Peak Chapter 10 Money and Bankruptcy. Yan Kai didn't think much of this though, because they were in Black Plum Village, located close to High Heaven Pavilion. The sight of other disciples coming down to the village was quite common. A little while ago, Yan Kai arrived at the line for rice. The line was quite long, the length of 2 stalls. The business was very prosperous, but only has one waiter running round serving. The boss was calculating about money on an abacus at the counter, while the wife greeted the guests. As more people finished ordering, the line gradually became shorter, and Yan Kai joined the line. Yan Kai cried out. A 40-year-old looking lady looked up to see who it was. When she saw it was Yan Kai, she suddenly smiled and said, young man, you came to buy rice again?" "Yes." He walked to the front of the counter and pointed a bag behind the counter and said, "Give me 1 bag, please." While the lady was tying up the bag with a string, she said, "Young man, you buy just 1 bag a month. Is this enough for you?" Yan Kai replied, "It's enough, you liar." The lady retorted while looking at Yan Kai, "Look at you, such thin arms and legs. If you're eating properly, then why are your arms and legs so thin? Yan Kai smiled sheepishly. I also go to the mountains to hunt, so therefore even with just one bag I won't be hungry. While the boss concentrated on calculating the bill, he whispered to her, "Go fetch the old rice from the back and give it to this child. We'll listen to the boss." Madame replied with a smile. "How is this right?" Yan Kai said out loudly. The lady immediately frowned her face. "What use is old rice? Leaving it there will only provide a place for insects to grow. Anyways, people won't eat it." But the owner said that this rice still has some nutrients, although less. "You wait here, I will go get some for you take home." As she was saying this, she had already started walking towards the back room. And Kai's heart swelled, for he did not know what to say. Every time he came to buy rice, the boss and his wife would always find various excuses to give him more. They say that insects will grow in old rice and the like, but in fact, it was always good rice they gave him, not old rice. Their generosity gave Yan Kai hope in this sad world. Aunt Kay's voice had a slight trembling to it. The boss smiled and looked up. "When living alone, don't you have household problems? In the future, whenever you're hungry, just come to our shop. We may not have much, but we still have enough rice for you to eat." Okay, Yan Kai nodded his head. This world still had good people around. Shortly, two enthusiastic people came to the rice store and kicked some people who were ready to order their meals from the line and away from the storefront. Ah! The second brother fell, landed on his butt. It was a big problem, because after he fell to the ground, he couldn't get up again. "Boss," he called towards the people who had kicked the little brother as he ran out from behind the counter, and towards the two men. Yan Kai quickly helped second brother up whilst intently glaring at the two evil-faced men. One of the men, looked pale and thin, was clutching his stomach, while the other one was built like a bear, supported the pale one. These two were the ones who kicked down the second brother. The man people shouted out. "I am." "Boss," he quickly replied. He was only an ordinary merchant. Yet the two men who called him out had such fierce-looking faces. The swords at their waist and the fierce faces that showed they were not easily trifled with. "Boss," he wondered what had happened. "Well, well, so you are the black-hearted boss. You even dared to sell poisonous rice to my brother. Look at him. Originally he was a strong man, but after eating your rice he became this sick. Normally he is as strong as a bear, but he can hardly stand now. You black-hearted person." At this outburst from the man boss, he worriedly stammered out, how could this be? How could it?" The man then said, "How would I know? This morning my brother bought some rice from you, and made rice porridge. Then he became like this after eating the rice he bought from you. I was lucky I didn't eat any, otherwise I also would become like him." Boss, his forehead began to sweat. He took his sleeves and kept wiping his forehead, and said, "Respected customer, I fear there might be a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding your mother. If it wasn't for your rice, then what caused him to become like this?" The Han man roared. Sullivan, just for readers to note, this doesn't take place in China present, future, or past. Yan Kai sat down and pondered the situation while all eyes were on the commotion. "Boss, he is such a nice person." Yan Kai couldn't believe that this person who gave him rice would put poison in it. Not to mention the fact, boss, he couldn't possibly have a black heart in Yan Kai's mind. A black-hearted businessman wouldn't be so stupid as to poison his own rice. The two men's poor excuses were really unbearable, and they couldn't even consider that it was something else. Therefore, these two are definitely here to ruin others. But this move was a bit too evil, for they implied that the boss needed someone to die just to earn some money. Even though Yan Kai's body was weak, he was still a practitioner. And through these past years, he had seen countless types of people. So he felt he could accurately judge Boss He. The man was also someone who he owed greatly, and when Yan Kai witnessed this, it caused his face to fall. He stood up and said, "These two what?" One of the men threw him a glare, his anger evident. Yan Kai didn't speak, but boss, he immediately sprang in front of him. He slowly shook his head for Yan Kai to stop. "There's a tear, boss, you're too kind. Uncle he." Yan Kai was stunned. "Even in bankruptcy, boss," he whispered. Yan Kai just helplessly sighed. That fact that the boss said the signal that he knew what the two Han men were on about. But in order to do business, one must have a good name. The earlier commotion had already attracted a lot of attention. If this continued, then the rice stand's reputation would go down the drain. Even if one knew what they said was false, one could only comply with them and hurriedly hope to end this fiasco before too much damage was done. In desperation, boss, he faced the man regarding your brother's illness. "All I can say is that it has nothing to do with me." After the two men heard this, one cried out in anger, "Even if it's not related, I have already come to this rice stand. If I don't make the truth clear, then my brother's suffering would be in vain. He should be sent to the doctor immediately. But of course, if you are willing to shoulder the medical bills, then we are willing to drop the subject." After this statement, it was clear that they really wished for boss he to go bankrupt to avoid misfortunes. If people really wanted to extort money, they would do it over a period of time. The demands that these two men were making were too short-sighted. If boss he agreed to pay them off now, his rice stand's reputation would still suffer. For nothing is watertight, and news of him selling poisoned rice was spread. This told Yan Kai that the men were either not interested in extorting boss he for more money, or that they had some other goal. Who would have imagined that these two Han men had no intention of compromising? "You black-hearted boss. Who do think we two brothers are, to be exploited by you so freely? We two brothers were really unlucky to have bought poisoned rice from you. Where is your guilty conscience?" That statement resonated quite deeply with Yan Kai. He curled his lip while sitting, thinking, "Then are you the virtuous one, living life clear from any conscience?" Boss, he was also stupefied. What were these two men here to extort money? While stunned and unsure what to do, more and more people had started to gather. A handsome boy similar to Yan Kai's age had also appeared. From his looks, he was clearly far better off than Yan Kai. That young man casually walked up to the men and circled them with interest. Whilst doing so, he constantly clicked his tongue. Others may have not noticed, but with a glance Yan Kai recognized those three as the people he spotted earlier in the alley. The crowd just stared at the boy who had just appeared. Weren't these three men together? Yan Kai sensed an evil plot in the air. "Sullivan, they got found out even before the ball started rolling. Genius."